My name is Phil Perazio, and I'm a urologic oncologist, a surgeon. Like many of you, I absolutely love what I do, and I would not choose another profession. But I have struggled with professional identity, practice efficiency, and wellness over the years. Operate with Zen is a podcast designed to explore a mindful approach to surgery and to being a surgeon. By discussing these struggles and mindful solutions, I hope together we can create a community of strong and healthy surgeons. Enjoy. Welcome to this episode of Operate with Zen. Today I have the great pleasure of being joined by Michelle Quirk. Michelle, introduce yourself to the audience.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I am Michelle Quirk. I'm a primary care pediatrician in Philadelphia, and I am a running coach and the founder of my run coaching business, which is called Mindful Marathon. And I'm very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to be here too. And Michelle and I first met through a mutual patient, we'll say, and we kind of hit it off and have been talking running, and I don't marathon anymore, but marathoning and distance running, and how all of that can impact our wellness as physicians. So if you don't mind, Michelle, give us a little bit of the origin story. Where did Mindful Marathon, and we'll plug it now once, and we'll plug it again at the end, but if anybody's interested in checking this out, it's mindful-marathon.com or at YouTube, Mindful Marathon, and you'll find all Michelle's videos and kind of links. But give us the origin story.
Yeah, well, I think to go to the origin, we have to go back to the fact that I was not always a runner. So I was a kid who really struggled with running. I looked at the track team and cross country team, in high school, and thought they were made of a different genetic material than I was. And I was really not a very athletic child or young adult. And so I tried running. Like, I really wanted to run. I had, I had reasons that I wanted to do it. And I had started and quit like countless times. I lost count. And I really got consistent with it about 10 years ago. And that was like right at a very difficult time. I had finished my residency, moved to a new place, started a job as a hospitalist, was newly married. And so all of that, wasn't enough, but my dad was diagnosed with lung cancer. And so there was like this big ball of stress, basically was my life at that point. And I found myself, talking to my patients and families about taking care of themselves and wellness and exercise and nutrition and sleep and all of these things that we talk about. And I thought, here I am talking the talk, but not walking the walk. Like, I'm really not taking good care of myself. I'm certainly not getting very good sleep. I'm very stressed, very anxious about my dad, rightly so. And so, it was one night I was standing in the ER and I just decided, you know what, I am going to try running again, and I'm going to just do it differently this time and lace on my sneakers, go 5 or 10 minutes around the block, what I tell my patients and families to do, and start from there, instead of trying to go out with this mentality like I must go 3 miles or I must hit 5 miles in order to be successful at this. And so that's how it started. And I think I quickly got hooked because I was spending this time with myself, and it was a lot easier to do in short bursts of time. And I wasn't coming back, huffing and puffing and feeling horrible. And so I wanted to keep going out there. And I found kind of a way to be alone with my thoughts and also with everything that was going on with my dad. And I think that's what kept me lacing on my sneakers. And so my love of running really grew from there. That's really the origin, I suppose, if we go all the way back.
Wow, I love that. I think there's so many good points there for people to hear. Is first, you weren't a natural runner, and there are very few people who are natural runners. So I think that's fair that we start there. There are very few natural runners out there, and it's okay. And I love how you were talking the talk, but not walking the walk. And I think so many of us do that as physicians, and we see that. And kudos to you for kind of starting there. So, and I think the last point, which we're going to spend more time on talking later, is starting small, right? Just a little 5 to 10 minutes, get a little inertia. You know, one of my favorite things to tell people all the time is New Year's resolutions fail all of the time because people try and set these ridiculous goals for themselves. Start
Mm-hmm.
small and make 5 to 10 minutes the norm. And then the next change is 10 to 20 minutes. And then
Mm-hmm.
that's the norm. And then the next change grows from there. So starting small is a great piece of advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think people can get small wins that way, or at least for me, right? It was like, oh, okay, I did 5. Let me try 10. That felt pretty good. Let me go a little further around the block. And like sooner or later, at some point, I roped in, my husband to sign up for our first like official 5K. I think we trained for that for like, it felt like months and months. That was probably so back at the time. But yeah, it kind of starts with one thing that leads to all of these others. And certainly when I started running, if you had told me I would run a marathon, I would have said you were absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's a big undertaking. So yeah, and I'll just say, I was recently having a conversation with one of our residents who was really unhappy with kind of her physical well-being. And she's right in the throes of junior residency and really working hard. And I said, well, what do you want to do? She said, well, ideally I would love to work out an hour a day. I said, okay, I'd love for you to work out an hour a day too, but that's probably not realistic. So let's start small. Let's set a goal, 2 days a week, 3 days a week, 20 minutes. If you
Mhm.
can knock that out and make that the norm, let's figure out a time of day that works for you, build that into your schedule, and then start small. And she's actually been doing very well with it. So, it's setting the bar a little bit lower sometimes helps us, achieve those goals.
Yeah, yeah. And I think for busy physicians, busy professionals in general, planning it out so that it works with your life is hugely important. I would also like to go out and run for an hour some days, and that doesn't happen for me either. So it's about looking at, what works for you and your work schedule, your family schedule, but also, taking deliberate time for these self-care measures, whatever that means for you, but really like setting aside that time for yourself, even if it is 15, 20 minutes a few times a week at the beginning, and you can always grow it from there.
Yeah. So do you plan out your weeks for running, or is it kind of, a loose planning out? Tell us, how you organize your personal week, and then we'll talk about, how you help other people organize their weeks.
Yeah, it depends. I think now if I don't have a race on the calendar, if I'm not in like an active training cycle, I would run anyway now. Like I don't need to write it down anymore, but I used to have to. I used to have to put it on my calendar in order for it to get done. But what I do now, so right now I'm training for a half marathon. So I usually do it week by week. So I look at the week ahead and say, okay, I have 4 runs that I want to do this week. I have a day where I do some strength training, a day where I do yoga. I have certain days that are very busy days in the clinic for me. Like a Monday is a 12-hour day. So usually I run a short run before that long day, and I take Tuesday off of running. Tuesday's usually my rest day. And then Wednesdays, I'm off from clinical work and I do more of my run coaching. And so that can be a longer run. Like I might have an hour on a Wednesday. So that's how I sort of look at the week like, okay, what's the work schedule? What other appointments do we have? Family things, dinners, like put all those on the calendar and then say, okay, I want to get out there 3 times a week for whatever it is, a 20 or 30-minute workout. And, yourself, are you a morning exerciser? Is it better if you could do some walking at your lunch break if you get a lunch break? Most of us physicians, you're shoveling it in at your desk. And so lunchtime is not a good time for me to try to get a walk in, but it might be for you.
Yeah, I think those are all great pieces of advice. And when I'm trying to pick up new things, I think the calendar is huge, because not only does it make you think about that and kind of set an intention about what you want to do for the week or whatever it may be, but it's also a way to hold yourself accountable, right? You've made a meeting. We're really good at keeping meetings when things are on our calendar. So if we put it on the calendar, we kind of hold ourselves accountable. So it's a nice trick that I think really helps.
Yeah. And I think maybe one more point to say is I think I used to be very rigid about this. I'm more flexible with myself now. Like I remember going back and like training for those first couple of longer distance races. I really thought like, wow, if I miss this run or if I shorten this run, I'm not going to be able to do the race. Or it was very much, a lot of us in medicine tend to be very type A perfectionist type people. And when we go in, we go all in. And that was me. And so I've gotten a little more flexible with myself. Like, okay, if we miss a run or if we have to shorten a run here or there, one run is not going to make or break, 3 months of training. And I can see that now, but but it's hard. There's a fine line with some of these things, especially when you really are very good at sticking to a plan and a calendar. So it works very well to put it there, but also just know that you don't have to be so rigid either.
Yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. I learned that one the hard way. So I was not a natural runner either, despite playing sports for a long time. In fact, I played baseball in college, and we had running tests as part of our evaluations. Basically, we came back from winter break or we'd come back from summer break, and just to make sure we were in shape, we had these kind of accountability tests. And I had it down where I could finish my running tests within seconds of what the limit was to get in trouble, because I hated running. And then I got out of college, and you get to a point where you need some alternative forms of exercise, and running became a great way. A buddy and I, we were living in New York at the time. I was in med school. We'd meet in Central Park. We'd go on these long runs, and we said, you know what, we signed up for New York Road Runners, and we said we should do a marathon. It was just kind of one of those things we wanted to do. It was that marathon year. It was actually kind of like this year. It was November, and it ended up being 85 degrees with 85% humidity.
Oh,
And I think it was
dear.
a record number of people dropped out of the race. We did not drop out. We finished, but way, way, way beyond, kind of the goal we had set for ourselves. We weren't even in the ballpark, but we did it. And so we ended up doing it the next year to do it again, to kind of
Yes.
get a more respectable time that said we actually like trained and did this. But long story
Yeah.
short, the lesson was that first year we got on a running program and we followed it to the T. And I think that was part of the reason we really struggled actually in the race as well, because we had run ourselves into the ground in training. And the next year we learned not only that you don't have to follow the program exactly, it's a guideline,
Yes.
but also to pay attention to our bodies and that flexible training. Like if you're really sore and really tired, because he was in finance working his behind off. I was in clinical stuff working my behind off. And some days you're just wiped and you're not going to be able to give a 6 mile run everything you have. So
Yeah.
give a 3 mile run everything you have, or pay attention to what you need. So I
Yeah.
love the rigid versus flexible. And that analogy holds true to things in addition to just running, but I think especially for
Yeah.
running.
Yeah, I think also as I've gotten older, like leaning into the rest and recovery piece has been a learning experience for me and for my athletes as well. But really paying attention to that, I think back to that very stressful time when I started running, and probably for you guys when you were training for the marathon, like all of our stress hormones were probably very high, which was inhibiting recovery. So even if you did take a day off, like I don't know if recovery at that point was really the best. Like we probably needed an extra couple of days, not just a day.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've completely derailed your origin story, but I love where we're
Oh, it's
going.
okay.
So
It's fine.
yeah, let's talk about rest and
Yeah.
how important rest is. So
Mm.
if you wherever you want to start with this, if you want to start with kind of physiology and go from there, or you want to start nuts and bolts on how you rest and how you recommend resting, let's get into that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this was a hard one for me to learn also. I I remember I still sometimes joke. I've always loved to sleep, which is interesting that I went into medicine, right? Because we are very sleep deprived for a number of years. And so for a number of years after residency, yeah, like I would just be wanting to sleep all the time. And I would say that I was making up for all that time I lost in residency, but I still love to sleep now. And so I don't think I can use that as an excuse anymore. But definitely, as I have gotten older and with this, with all of the activity that I do now, I've kind of learned how to lean into this rest a little bit more. And maybe this is, a good time we can kind of transition it and talk a little bit about meditation too, because that was not a part of my life early on when I started running. And I thought, a little bit about mindfulness really when I finally ditched the headphones on my runs outside. I started to develop this relationship with nature really, and that kind of kept me going out for more as well. And just noticing the different seasons. Like I'd be running on the same trail and experiencing that trail all through the seasons and the different animals and the plants and things. So I thought, like, this is really helping in a mindful way. And that was kind of dipping my toe, I guess, maybe into an active form of mindfulness. But now that I have started a regular meditation routine, I feel like that is very restful for me. And so now there is a little bit of a difference, or at least I see it that way, where I'm sitting and I'm doing a focused meditation and then I'm going out and running. And of course, I still have this wonderful relationship with the trail and the animals and all of that. But I think meditation has been huge for some rest in like the middle of the day or the middle of a very busy day, which was surprising to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. I've kind of rationalized these as kind of micro and macro breaks. And the macro break is like you said, it's sleep. It's where our bodies physiologically recover from what we've just done to them, whether it's a tough day at work, or going on a run or workout or whatever it may be. But sometimes those micro breaks are huge too. And meditation is a great way to do that, to just kind of let your body kind of sink in, catch up, let things reset and recharge for a little bit throughout the day. And you can feel when your body needs it. And I think as you spend more time, whether you want to actively meditate or kind of sit in silence and meditate, I think you learn what your body needs and when you need it. And it's always a practice. You're always looking to improve. So I think it's become a really nice part of my practice as well too. So good to hear you're doing that as well, Michelle. I'm not the only one. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, and I've started to use it more in the middle of the workday too. Like especially sometimes after a patient encounter, or something was very stressful, or bad news, things like that. And to just shut the exam room door and go right to the next patient, it feels like too much sometimes. And so I found a way to just maybe go into an empty exam room and just do like some short breath work for like a minute or two, just to reset myself before I go into the next room. And I think that's been very helpful, to just, kind of bookend a visit. And you always feel like you're rushed and you don't have enough time to do that. But really just a minute of a box breath or something is very helpful.
Yeah. Talk people, just since you brought it up, tell people what a box breath is, just because not everybody who listens understands all of that. So explain a box breath and then we'll go from there.
Yeah. This is one, and I teach some of these to my pediatric patients, so it's very easy. It's simple. But you picture like a square in your mind, or picture a box, and you're going to just draw the corners or draw the sides of the box. So as you breathe in, you're going to go from one corner up to the top, and then you breathe out and go to the side of the box, breathe in and go to the bottom of the box, and then breathe out, and you've made a box. And you just keep doing that.
Yeah, I do it with my kids. It's a great way to help them calm down too. And you can see them picturing the box or the square and kind of working through it. Yep. Yeah. And it's a great tool. And I've started incorporating micro meditations too into my practice. And the other one I recommend is not only breathing techniques, but a loving kindness meditation. If you're having a really rough clinical day, and there's actually data to prove this, there's actually a study, 7 to 8 minutes of a loving kindness meditation, which I'll talk everybody through in a second too, can change the outlook and the outcome of your day dramatically. And the study, if I'm remembering correctly, actually showed it was physicians who did a love and kindness meditation versus those who did not, and their patient satisfaction scores went up actually pretty dramatically after the meditation. And so a loving kindness meditation is basically giving yourself some form of grace or comfort. So you start with yourself, and you start a meditation. I'm thinking of I want to be well, or I want to be healthy, or whatever it may be. And then you slowly start to expand that out. It goes from yourself to, could be somebody else in the room, could be to people you care about, loved ones, and then eventually expands out to larger populations or people you don't get along so well with, or could even be that patient or person you just had a tough interaction with. And just kind of working through that process of wishing for safety, health, ease in your life, those kinds of things can really help change the outlook of a day too.
Yeah. It's really great. I love that. I love the box breath. I love, sometimes I'll have kids, like little kids, just trace their palm on the exam paper, especially like before shots and things like that,
That's
just to
really
get them to
one.
focus on something else. But yeah, it's really helpful.
Yeah. So let's get a little bit more into active meditation. And I will tell you, I had the same experience too. And now mindfulness is a normal part of my day, but it wasn't for a very long time. But in retrospect, my first, I would say, mindful experiences were when I was marathon training. And all of a sudden, you get out in a long run and you're 45 minutes, an hour into the run. And all of a sudden, it kind of felt like the world went clear. It was quiet. You noticed the birds and the trees and the breeze and the people and the sun or whatever it may be. And that was my first experience of getting into that mindfulness state. And it would take 45 minutes or an hour. Now with practice and sitting quietly, it still takes me 7, 8, 12 minutes sometimes to get into that state. I'm not a great meditator. I don't think anybody is. But with practice and repetition, you can get there on a more routine basis.
Yeah. I think that's probably the same for me too. When I was training for the marathon, there were times where I would go on a long run and then lose track of time. So I would just be going and going, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, "Oh wait, what mile am I in? Like, what time is it? Do I need to drink something or eat something?" And I think it's funny. I mean, after that race, I had a very wonderful first marathon experience, but the weather was very good. I think if it had been hot, I would have had the same experience that you guys did. But yeah, I came back from that race like wanting to shout from the rooftops that everyone should go run a marathon. It will change your life. And I think that, yeah, like dipping my toe into the mindfulness there during all of those long runs was part of it. It wasn't just the race experience, obviously. It was all of that training.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just make the quick point that, active meditation can happen through a variety of physical activities, but the point is you're doing something physical to get into that mindfulness or present space. The easy ones to think of are actually kind of high intensity sports, mountain climbing, ice climbing, anything where your life is kind of on the line forces you to be in the moment and mindful, but you don't have to do dangerous things either. I mean, running, cycling, walking can all be active meditation practices. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, let's get back to the story. Sorry. So I interrupted you. So,
oh no, it's okay.
you did your running. So, sorry you were going through that struggle with your dad and you had all that stress going on. You found your outlet in running. And then bring us up to speed here. Are we at Mindfulness Marathon yet, or where do we go?
I think so. I think after the marathon, after I ran that, I really started to kind of take my friends and family along with me, for getting everyone to sign up for a variety of races and dabbling in writing training plans. And by that point, I had started working with my own coach, and that was a journey too. For a long time, I thought that only like elite runners had run coaches, or like if you were on a track team or a cross country team. I didn't realize that there are run coaches for amateur people and joggers and walkers and everybody. But after I started working with him, I made so many improvements so quickly. Like that first year I worked with him, wow, yeah, I saved probably, several years of time to improve in the sport. And that's really, I started at that point kind of dabbling in run training plans for friends and family and reading all I could about run physiology and how do we structure a training plan and why do we do it this way, and why do we taper, why do we fuel a certain way, all of that. And that is what led me to start the business. Like I officially took my run coach certification with the Road Runners Club, and in New York, actually. So after I did that, I started the business, and that was 2019. And here we are. So I've coached quite a number of athletes now. It's great.
That's really cool. And I love what you said there too, is that coaches aren't just for the elite, right? It's for anybody.
No.
Yeah, you want to pick up something new. You want to be better at something. Coaches are a huge part of getting better. And in surgery, I'm a big proponent of coaching in surgery too. And I don't necessarily mean just in the operating room with the physical stuff. I mean, we can all use coaches to better organize our days and be more efficient. And there are people out there who are really good at that and really enjoy helping people do that. So seek out coaches, and they're different than mentors.
Yeah.
But I think it's a really great point. So you brought up some kind of specific workout things. And you said earlier in your workout variety now, not only do you run, but strength training and yoga are an important part of your variety. So talk to us about the importance of variety of workouts and physical health and how it keeps you in kind of top form.
Yeah. I think everybody probably has what they really enjoy, right? And it doesn't have to be running. I think, like, I've always liked yoga. There are periods of time where I do more of that and less running, but I notice it really helps with recovery from the running, and it helps with, it's sort of a little bit of accountability for stretching also, like a long period of stretching that I often need. So I've kind of worked that into the routine. But yeah, some people find that what works for them is running 5 or 6 days a week, and then on certain days they group their hard workouts together. So if they want to strength train as well, they'll pair that with their hardest or fastest run day, or like a speed workout, and that's okay too. For me, it's sort of, I like to keep everything separate on different days. but it's to each his own. But I think for a runner, strength training is very important, and a lot of people, the closest, let me say this, the closest activity physiologically to running would be cycling. So if you do have to take time off of running, cycling is like another great option. But I also have a lot of athletes who love to cycle outside and or use their Peloton bikes. And so we often will work that into training almost like as another run day. So maybe they run 3 days a week, they cycle twice, they do a strength training workout once, but it doesn't, yeah, some people hear like, oh, you're a run coach, you must run every day. And like, no, I don't run every day. And I also have an off season. Like I take time off and don't run at all and do other things. But yeah, I think everybody has to find what they like, whatever sport or exercise that is, or maybe it's, it's hiking, it's things like that, right?
Yeah, I think there's huge importance in kind of varying the workouts you do. I think it works different sets of muscles. It keeps your mind sharp. In some ways, probably prevents against injury by forcing you to do different things and preventing injuries of repetition.
Yeah.
So,
For sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of struggling with this right now, as you and I have talked about. But I injured my knee recently, and I just had my ACL reconstructed, and I'm trying to figure out what my future is going to be from a kind of physical well-being standpoint. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be basketball anymore, which was a big part of kind of who I was physically, I think. But I'm okay with that. So I'm trying to figure out what the next cardio is going to be. But one of the things I realized quickly, one of the things I have been able to do since I can't really do anything on my legs, is I've been strength training more because I can do upper body workouts. And I
Mm-hmm.
almost forgot how much I really enjoyed lifting weights and kind of getting that part of my working on that part of my physical health.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, I was the opposite. I was a yoga everyday person. That was like my thing. Every
Mm.
day, 20 to 30 minutes, strength, flexibility, mindfulness kind of all rolled into one. And now I think I need to formally make strength training part of my daily routine, where it used to be yoga every day. If I can fit in some strength training, do that. I think I may alternate yoga and strength training. And if I can get some yoga in on the strength training days, then maybe I'll get, a little extra yoga in. But I think the variety is important, and I'm learning that lesson right now.
Yeah. And it's really hard to have to abruptly end your sport. I definitely, I mean, I there are injuries that I've had, not I was thinking about this when you were talking about your knee. I like sprained my ankle while I was gardening one time, but that was a huge thing and like took me out of running for months, but it didn't have to do with running. Like I just tripped in my garden. And so sometimes these things, yeah, it can take you out for a long time or permanently, which is, yeah, that's really hard.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the psychology of that is really interesting too. I'm struggling with this a little bit. I always, I've at least for the last 10 years or so, I felt like basketball was part of my identity.
Mm.
But this quickly made me realize basketball has nothing to do with my identity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm who I am. And much more important to my identity is spending time with my children and being outdoors. And so it's really helped me kind of reshape and refocus that. And so I'm really interested to see where I end up in the next few months as I'm rehabbing this ACL in the knee. And I'm looking forward to it. I know I'm going to be physically active, so I'm not concerned about that. But I'm
Yeah.
really excited to see what direction it goes in.
Yeah. I like how you reframe that. And I think, each time that I have had an injury and I couldn't run, I sort of go through all the cycles of grief, I think, if for a couple of weeks or months, but whenever I have gotten back to it, it's like that much sweeter. So I feel like, no one knows how many, miles we have in us, I suppose. And so might as well enjoy it while we can do it. But yes, it there's much more to our identity, right, than our sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially as physicians, right? I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many more things that we do. A couple other run specific things, but not necessarily run specific. We'll try and branch them out from just being run specific. But you talked about tapers and you talked about fueling.
Uh-huh.
Um, Help us understand, because I think the analogies here are really important for what we do on a daily basis and a regular basis as physicians as well too. So talk us through concepts of tapering, and then talk us through some concepts of fuel, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, yeah. I think there are so many analogies to with running for life and for doctors especially. But with running, where we start from is usually we call that base training. So a lot of people think, well, that's kind of boring. Like you just go out and do these easy miles, but you have to have this good base from which to build training upon. So you don't just want to come from your couch and start training for a marathon tomorrow, right? There are people who do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. Like you want to go slow and steady, a little bit at a time, and kind of build this healthy base. So base training can be a couple of months, if you're, especially if you're a newer runner. And then if you're in the middle of a training cycle, so a lot of times I'll just pick the half marathon. It's a very popular distance, super fun. It's my favorite. But usually that is about a 3-month training cycle. So if I've got a couple of months of my usual base training under my belt, and then we start a training cycle for a half marathon, there's shorter cycles within this longer 3 months. So sometimes people are like, oh my goodness, 3 months. I don't want to see all 3 months at once. And some people do, but it can feel a little overwhelming. Like this race is 3 months out. We know we have to do this training. So we break it up into smaller cycles, maybe every 2 to 3 weeks. So we build for maybe 2 weeks. And then on the third week, we take a little bit of a step down. which means the mileage is a little bit less, the time on our feet is a little bit less, lets the body recover, and then you can kind of keep building. And so the taper means before the race, so before like a half marathon, usually there is about a 7 to 10 day taper, which means that we hit our peak mileage like 2 weeks out from the race. And then the next week we step it down just a little bit so that we let the body rest and let it absorb all of the training that we did, so that on race day it's like refreshed and ready to go. Like most of the time people end up running a little bit too fast at the start line of a race because they are rested from that taper. And a marathon taper can be 2 or even 3 weeks. So by the time you get to the start line, you're like, woof, I'm ready. But yeah, there's a lot of physiology there that we want to rest to be able to be active at the time that we want. So it's timed based on physiology. But yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's a taper.
Yeah. And you're right. I mean, those analogies are so good for what we do. And we see this in surgery all the time, but I'm sure in clinical medicine, it's very appropriate too. The old dogma was just you burn as hard as you can for as long as you can. And we've learned that rest and recovery allows you to be more efficient, harder working, get more out of the time you put in than just slogging through things, which also contributes to things like burnout and, kind of the attrition rates we're seeing in medicine right now. And I think in academic medicine, sometimes we get lucky because we kind of have meetings and lectures and things that give us natural breaks built into it.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed over the years to be a little more formal with kind of, all right, you're going to have a week or two where you're really killing it, and then plan a down week. And those kind of natural tapers and travels and vacations,
Mm-hmm.
you can build in to maximize your efficiency, minimize your burnout. And on the flip side, you can also say, all right, I've got spring breaks coming up in April. We're going away to Disney with the kids, and that can be exhausting too. But, but for the week or two before that, you know what? I'm going to crush it because I know I've got a week to recover where we're going to be in Disney or on the beach or wherever it's going to be, where I can relax a little bit. So you can build those things in to be maximally efficient. And we don't have to do the same thing every day, every week, that it leads to problems.
Yeah. And you can't keep building indefinitely. I think for a while, especially at the beginning, with anything new, it's easy to kind of go a little bit overboard and try to do too much. And you do see a lot of gains very quickly, especially in running. If you're a newer runner, like the gains at the beginning are really great. And so you just want to keep like pushing and pushing. But at some point, something happens. Usually it's an injury from overdoing it, but it's absolutely the same in life and work. And I do the same thing. Like there will be weeks that are a lot heavier, knowing that at the end of that week or two, there are a couple of days off, or knowing at the end of the month, there is a vacation. And like planning trips and vacations has become definitely a regular part of life here. We love to travel and hike and do destination races and all of that. But having it on the calendar is very important for our mental health.
Yeah, that's great. And I think the important part of this too is also being intentional about it. You could just show up to work and do what's on your docket for the day, or you can take control of your life. And the second, taking control gives you much more freedom, gives you much more empowerment, and allows you to kind of take ability of the physiology of being a doctor. I mean, it's not easy to do these things on a regular basis. There's a lot of physical and emotional toll this takes on us, so we can take advantage of those natural cycles and natural physiology to be optimized.
Yeah, I love that.
So tell us a little bit about fuel. So
fuel, yes.
yeah, let's get into fuel and how we keep ourselves well nourished. We're really working at the bottom of the pyramid here, and I love this. We're talking about physical well-being, nutrition, sleep. I mean, these are the things we need to work on to be able to kind of rise up and do more meaningful work. But let's get on fuel. Let's get on nutrition. And how do you talk to your clients about that?
Yeah, so there's with fuel, with nutrition, I think there's kind of your everyday, day to day, right? Like what are you eating on the regular, and then how do we fuel for the run, during the run, after the run? So those are maybe two different conversations. When I'll talk about the one like for longer endurance races, if you've done them yourself or you've seen runners, you often see them take like packets of gels or things in the middle of a race. And those are to be able to fuel those very long runs. So our bodies have enough sugar in the form of glycogen, like enough glucose in the form of glycogen to last us about 90 minutes of activity, like moderate activity. So after 90 minutes, if you don't take in any sugar source, things can get a little dicey. Like we can get a little fuzzy, headaches, nausea, not feel very well, muscle cramps. So certainly if you're running a marathon, and usually a half marathon too, you need to take in some extra fuel while you're actually out there. So when we train for these longer distances, we help train the gut as well, and train to take in fuel at different time periods. So that's like within the run. Now, for the rest of life, which is probably more important for everyone else listening, I think thinking about it, thinking about myself as an athlete, I think was a mindset shift, and thinking like, would would an athlete eat this or drink this, right? Like, it really helped with just really not eating as much processed food and like snack foods and things like that. So lots of whole foods, plants, fruits, legumes. Like the runners in the house eat a lot of food in general. And so we have very big appetites. So you do have, you have to fuel yourself appropriately, but that doesn't mean eating, donuts and having lots of beer, although there's always beer at the end of races, right? So I think like leaning into whole foods, we are plant forward in our house. So we still eat a little bit of meat in the form of like chicken and fish, but a lot of plants on the plate. And just from the running perspective, we are trying to dial in like our carb and protein ratio. So like after a run, making sure to get in some carbs and some protein so that we are refueling appropriately and rebuilding these muscles that we broke down in our long run. But yeah, it's been a journey. I think, it's like learning a little bit at a time about this, because sports nutrition wasn't like a specialty that I learned about in medical school. And so, yeah, it's interesting. But for the day-to-day, I think maybe just that question, like, in order to fuel myself as an athlete, like what would, I don't know, Dina Castor eat, or drink? And how does that play in? Just to put it in perspective. So I think our diets have gotten, much better over the years, like much less processed food now.
Yeah, I love, and I think those are great lessons for people out there. And it's the identity is a huge part of that, right? Identifying yourself as an athlete or someone's healthier. I talked to a lot of surgeons about, being an elite performer. And then it's not true. It's true beyond surgeons too, but right. We have this kind of elite level we need to perform at on a regular basis, whether it's, just whether it's taking care of patients in the hospital, whether it's taking care of patients in clinic, or whether it's physically being in the operating room. We're required to perform at an elite level all of the time. So take care of yourself like an elite performer. And holding that mindset, holding yourself to that level of identity, I think is huge. And it'll allow you to it'll make the harder things easier to do. Right. Because it is easy to go to McDonald's. It is easy to go to the food truck. It is harder to meal prep. But if you do them, you're going to feel better at the end of the week, at the end of the month, and you're going to see some real gains.
I think we notice now that this is a lifestyle, right? When we do eat at a food truck, or we eat something fried that we haven't had in a long time, and maybe that's partially age, but I think our bodies are just not used to it anymore, and they let us know, and it doesn't feel good anymore. And so then you're like, when it doesn't feel good, you're like, well, I'm just going to avoid that. So
yeah. And then the flip side, it's a treat, right? It's, well, I haven't had this in 3 months. I'm going to have it. And then I don't feel like having it again for 3 months.
Yep.
And it's a very interesting phenomenon that works. Works really well. Well, good. And just say, have you read James Clear's Atomic Habits?
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many key points we've talked through today that are kind of
Yeah.
habit forming, good habit forming techniques. We talked about small changes, we talked about identity, all of these things to kind of improve who you are on a day-to-day basis. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that one up because I know people like to read out there, and people are always looking for contributions. So James Clear's Atomic Habits is a must read for anybody who wants to make
Yeah.
changes in their life.
Yeah, it's great.
Well, good. I wanted to ask you one more running question, but I think we should get into mindful marathon first because I think it'll segue nicely into my last running question for you.
Okay.
So tell us about mindful marathon and kind of logistics. If somebody's interested in running more, being more of a runner, they're interested in looking into mindful marathon. We went over the website. It's mindful-marathon.com. But what can they find on the website? How do they get started? What should they be thinking about?
Yeah. So I coach all levels of runners, but I have a special spot for people who were like me maybe 10 years ago. So definitely for the beginners out there, or for people who quit running, or maybe they were, on the track team or the cross country team and have maybe a love-hate relationship with running. I definitely have coached a number of athletes in that category as well. But I am in Philadelphia and I have some local clients, but the majority of the business is virtual. And I basically write custom training plans based on a variety of, goals and based on someone's schedule. So it's kind of like I give you a questionnaire, you give me all of your variables, and we figure out a training plan. And that goes into a platform called Final Surge, where we can talk to each other and kind of see the workout and give feedback in like a sort of like a text format. And then we do coaching calls over Zoom. But I also do some group programs. I have a group for beginners called Ready, Set, Run. It's probably my favorite group. And then I have a half marathon group that's currently in training, and all of those ladies are doing different races all over the country. So everybody has their own training plan, and then we come together for group calls. But yeah, if you're looking to get started, on the website, there is a free 1 month training plan. And if you're a walker, you're welcome here too. The plan is written for walkers and also using a technique called Run Walk. And so you can download that from their website and it will get you started.
So cool. So cool. I will delve more into the website. I've looked at it a bit, and I've looked at a lot of the YouTube videos, but I'm going to look into the running. Maybe I start a running program in about 6 weeks. So maybe I'll start. That's a rehab program, but maybe
Yeah.
it's a place for me to start too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and even if you start with the walk plan, when you're able to, yeah, that would be a perfect place to start.
Yeah, right now it's a little challenging. I'm in a
Oh,
straight leg brace, so that's a little
yeah.
challenging, but I'll get there eventually
Once you're cleared.
once I'm cleared. Yeah. So the last question I wanted to get into, and I think one of the real benefits of running, and you see with a lot of other sports too, is community.
Yeah.
And you've generated community here. You're a big part of community. So talk to us about the benefits of community that you see in kind of running and beyond.
Yeah. The running community is very special, I think. And when I started running, I think I was a little bit afraid because I was an outsider and I didn't see myself as a runner. And so those first couple of races, I'd stand, at the start line and think like I don't really belong here. But the truth is, runners are very lovely people, and they're happy to have you no matter what your pace. Like it doesn't mean you have to be fast, or you have to qualify for the Boston Marathon or whatever. But the running community is amazing, and I've developed so many friendships over the years. I have a whole group they're my Run Disney friends. So we all love these Disney races. So I have a group of friends there. There's a local community of runners here. My athletes, and through Mindful Marathon, I've met so many wonderful runners, but I think we also keep each other motivated. So that could be, going through a rough time with an injury or time off, or, personal struggles, work struggles. But yeah, like running helps through all of that. And then we also, we just egg each other on and sign up for all of these races. So it keeps you going and traveling and seeing new places. And yeah, so every community really probably has a local run group. And if you're looking for like a race that's near you, a website I like is called runningintheusa.com, and you can click on the state and just search, and 5Ks are very plentiful.
That's awesome. That's great advice. One of my favorite kind of running group analogies that I like to tell now is the Shalane Flanagan story, which I'm sure you heard, but Shalane was kind of late career and kind of starting to fall off her pace and her kind of elite level. She's an elite marathoner in the US. Sorry for people who don't know. And instead of kind of going the introvert route and really trying to work on her own, she started a running group of elite US women runners. And I think it was 12 women. And I think within the next 2 or 3 years, 11 of the 12 basically finished in top in the world championships in some major race. And so they really kind of elevated each other's performance by working together. And it just goes to show you the strength of community and how we can be resilient. And it's just a great example of many of how community work really helps.
Yeah, especially coming out of this pandemic, you know, I think we really lost that sense of community. I know I did for a long time. And so, you know, having races back on the calendar and having run groups and being able to run with friends and family is really it's a gift. So,
yeah. Michelle, this has been so much fun. There's so much more I want to talk to you about. So maybe we're going to do another one of these conversations later. But I just want to give you the opportunity before we kind of wrap up. What else do you want to talk about? What else should people know about you, about running, about Mindful Marathon? What have we missed?
I don't know. We had a good talk. It was circuitous, but we came back to it, I think. I don't know. I think that, you know, running has just brought a lot of joy to my life. And oh, you know what we didn't talk about was having a side business. But yes, I think running and the side business has really helped me to stay in medicine. And I think that's an important point, especially for all the listeners out there in medicine. So it doesn't have to be 100% medicine. You can find a balance with a passion project, with something else that you love to do, and you can make it work for you. So hopefully I'm an example of what's possible with growing a passion project into a side gig.
Yeah, that's great. And it gives you more enjoyment at what you do, you know, for your day job, let's call it.
100%.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it gives you something to look forward to every week that's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I've noticed the same thing. This podcast, this kind of Operate with Zen mindfulness journey has been that passion project for me. I've started a small professional development coaching business on the side. And that's been a huge, I would say return on investment, but just return. I mean, so much gratification working with other people to help them feel better about their lives and achieve a little more efficiency and happiness. And I think it's a great lesson for people to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And it just uses maybe a different part of your brain than what you use in medicine, maybe, but still helping people in a different way.
Yeah, it's an incredible message. So I'm going to summarize some of the amazing things you said today. So we started off with your origin story, and I loved one of the things that is important for people to hear is that you are not a runner. You didn't identify yourself as a runner, but now you are a run coach. And so really over time with changes and dedication, you can change who you are small steps at a time. I think that's one of the really important lessons today. Also early on, you said you were talking the talk to your patients, but not walking the walk. And a lot of us are guilty of doing that. Not that we waggle our fingers at our patients, but we're genuinely trying to help them. And yet we're not helping ourselves. And this is a great lesson that we can do both. We can help our patients by helping ourselves. We talked about some of the logistics of run training and some of those analogies for medicine as well. Talked about incorporating variety into your workouts and your physical well-being, running, yoga, strength, how important rest and recovery are, how important good nutrition and fueling yourself are. We talked about ways to build and make changes into your life. Some simple things I wrote down: start small. 5 to 10 minutes of walking or running is totally acceptable. You don't have to go out and run a marathon your first day or get anywhere near that. Putting things on your calendar will, especially in the beginning, will help you hold yourself accountable, and as well as set up a routine for yourself, and giving yourself breaks to recover and throughout the time. And lastly, we finished with passion projects and community, and I think those things are intertwined. The more you work with people and align your motivations and the things that give you excitement with the community around you, the more joy it will bring you. It gives you discretional energy. It improves the harmony in your life, and I think makes things a lot easier to progress through. So, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us. There's so many people who are going to benefit from this conversation. And I just want to tell them once again, mindful-marathon.com or Mindful Marathon on YouTube. You can find Michelle there. She is more than willing to be your coach and help you become a runner, even if you don't identify as one yet.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. That was like a whole masterclass.
Yeah, that was a ton
great.
of fun. Yep. Well, I can't wait to talk to you again. You have a wonderful day, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks.